This story is inspired by real events and documented moments from Amy Winehouse's life. Some scenes have been dramatized to capture the emotional truth of her connection with fans. The tape stopped rolling. Amy stood at the microphone, eyes closed, hands trembling. "I can't do this anymore." David Sullivan looked up from the mixing console. He'd been Amy's sound engineer for 6 years, recorded hundreds of hours with her, witnessed every session from Frank through Back to Black, seen her at her absolute best and her devastating worst. But he'd never heard her say those words. Not like this, not with that tone, not with that finality. It was May 17th, 2011, Tuesday afternoon, gray skies outside, rain threatening but not yet falling. Abbey Road Studios, Studio 2, the legendary room, the same space where the Beatles had recorded Sgt. Pepper's, where Pink Floyd captured the dark side of the moon, where legends were born and history was made. Amy Winehouse was supposed to be recording vocals for her third album, the one everyone had been waiting for, the follow-up to Back to Black that would prove she was back, that she was ready, that she could still do it. Instead, she was falling apart. "Amy," David said gently, his voice soft through the talkback system. "Do you want to take a break? Get some air? Have a cup of tea?" Amy opened her eyes. They were red-rimmed, tired beyond measure, empty in a way that scared him. "No," she whispered. "I want to tell you something I've never told anyone." What Amy said in the next 15 minutes would haunt David Sullivan for the rest of his life. But nobody knew about it. Not her family, not her management, not her friends, not the press. Until now. The session was supposed to start at noon, standard booking, 3 hours reserved, just Amy and David. No producers, no label executives, no entourage. The way Amy preferred it when she was actually trying to work. Amy arrived at 2:30. Nothing unusual there. Amy ran on her own time, always had. Even back in the Frank days when she was hungry and eager and desperate to prove herself, she showed up when she showed up. David was used to it. He'd learned early on that you couldn't rush Amy Winehouse. She arrived when she was ready, not a minute before. Trying to force her schedule only made her defensive, closed off, uncooperative. So David waited, set up the microphones, prepared the backing tracks, made sure everything was perfect for when she arrived. She came in through the back entrance, the one the staff used, not the famous front door with the zebra crossing the tourists photographed every day. Alone, no security, no assistant, no manager hovering, just Amy in faded jeans and a worn leather jacket that had seen better days. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, face completely bare of makeup, no signature cat-eye eyeliner, no carefully drawn beauty marks. She looked small, fragile, breakable. Nothing like the powerful, commanding force David remembered from the Back to Black sessions 5 years earlier, that Amy had filled a room just by entering it, had energy that crackled, had presence. This Amy looked like a ghost of that person. "All right, Sully," Amy said quietly, using the nickname she'd given him years ago. "Yeah, good. You?" Amy shrugged. A tiny movement, non-committal. She set down her canvas bag on the leather couch, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper covered in handwriting. The paper was worn, soft from being folded and unfolded repeatedly, coffee-stained in the corners. "Got some new lyrics," she said. Her voice was hoarse, rough. "Thought we could try recording them, see what happens." David looked at the paper she held. The writing was barely legible. Amy's characteristic scrawl. Words crossed out violently, margins filled with notes and additions, arrows pointing everywhere, a mess of creativity and chaos. "What's the song called?" he asked. Amy hesitated, looked down at the paper, then back at David. "Doesn't have a name yet, just words, things I needed to get out." She walked slowly to the vocal booth, the same booth where she'd recorded Back to Black, where she'd laid down "Love is a losing game" in one perfect, devastating take, where she'd laughed between lines, where she'd made jokes about her pronunciation, where she'd been happy. David watched her through the control room glass, She adjusted the microphone stand, lowered it slightly, tested the headphones, adjusted the foam windscreen, going through all the familiar motions. But something was profoundly wrong. Amy's movements were mechanical, automatic, like a person going through choreography they'd performed 1,000 times, but no longer understood why. Like she was somewhere else entirely, 1,000,000 miles away from Studio 2. "Ready when you are," David said into the talkback, keeping his voice gentle. Amy nodded once, closed her eyes, stood perfectly still, waiting for the track to start. David had prepared a simple piano backing track, nothing fancy, nothing complicated, just chords. Space for Amy's voice to breathe and soar the way it used to. The music started, soft, gentle, inviting. Amy opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her lips moved, her throat worked, but no sound emerged. Nothing at all. She tried again, took a breath, prepared herself. Still nothing. David stopped the track. "You okay?" Amy's eyes were still closed. "Yeah, sorry. Just give me a minute." Again. They tried 3 more times. Each time, Amy couldn't sing. The words wouldn't come. Her voice wouldn't cooperate. It was like watching someone try to remember how to breathe. Something that should be automatic, natural, effortless, but wasn't anymore. Finally, on the 5th attempt, she managed to get through the first verse. Her voice cracked on every other word, shaking, fragile, thin. Nothing like the powerful, commanding instrument David knew. Nothing like the voice that had won 5 Grammys. Nothing like the voice that had defined a generation. This was the voice of someone breaking. When the verse ended, Amy stopped, opened her eyes, looked directly at David through the glass separating them. "It's gone," she said flatly. "What's gone?" "My voice, the music, the connection, all of it. It's gone." David felt his stomach drop, felt ice spreading through his chest. "Amy, that's not true. You just need—" "No." Amy's voice was firm, clear, certain. "You don't understand, Sully. It's not that I can't sing. Physically, the mechanics still work. It's that I don't want to anymore. I don't have anything left to say, nothing left to give." She took off the headphones, carefully, deliberately, set them on the music stand, walked out of the booth, each step measured, controlled. She sat on the leather couch against the wall, the same couch where she used to sprawl between takes, where she'd eat takeaway and tell stories about her night out, where she'd been young and excited and full of possibility. David came out of the control room, sat next to her, left space between them, didn't crowd her. "Talk to me," he said. Amy stared at her hands, started picking at her nail polish. Black flakes falling onto her jeans like tiny dead things. She didn't look up. "Music used to be my friend," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "My best friend. The only thing that made sense when nothing else did. When my parents were fighting. When boys broke my heart. When I felt alone. I had songs. I had my voice. I had this." She gestured vaguely around the studio, at the equipment, the soundproofing, the history in the walls. "But now," she trailed off, shook her head. "Now, music just reminds me of everything I've lost. Every time I try to sing, all I can think about is Blake, the drugs, the chaos, the tours that went wrong, the people I've disappointed, the person I used to be." David listened, didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it, just listened. "I used to love being in the studio," Amy continued, her voice strengthening slightly. "Remember? The Back to Black sessions? We'd be here for 12, 14 hours sometimes, and I wouldn't want to leave. I'd be exhausted, but I'd want to do one more take, get it just right. Perfect." She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Remember when we did Love is a Losing Game? I made us redo it 47 times because I wanted every breath, every pause, every inflection exactly right. And you thought I was crazy. But I knew what I was hearing. I knew what it needed to be." David remembered. Of course he remembered. That was the Amy he knew. The perfectionist. The artist who cared so deeply about every detail that she'd work herself to exhaustion. "Now I can barely get through one take," Amy said. because every word I sing feels like a lie. How can I sing about love when I destroyed the only relationship that mattered to me? How can I perform soul music when I don't feel like I have a soul left? Amy, no, Sully, listen to me. Her voice was urgent now, desperate. She looked at him for the first time since sitting down. Her eyes were intense, pleading. How can I stand on stage and pour my heart out when I feel completely empty, when there's nothing left inside to pour? David felt helpless, completely out of his depth. He was an engineer, a technical person. He understood frequencies and compression and mic placement. Not this, not existential crisis, not the death of artistic passion. Amy stood up abruptly, started pacing the room. 3 steps one way, turn, 3 steps back, agitated, restless. Music was supposed to save me, she said. That's what everyone told me. My dad, my manager, the therapists, everyone. Get back in the studio, Amy. Focus on the music, Amy. Let the songs heal you, Amy. Music is your therapy, Amy. She stopped pacing, stood in the middle of the room. But what if music isn't the answer anymore? What if it's part of the problem? What if every time I write a song or record or perform, I'm just rehearsing my trauma, reliving it, making it permanent? David had no answer, no response. What could he possibly say to that? Amy sat back down, deflated, energy gone. Every song I write is about pain, Sully. About Blake, about addiction, about loss, about suffering. I'm trapped in this horrible cycle where I live the pain, then write about the pain, then record the pain, then perform the pain, and then thousands of people applaud because my suffering sounds pretty when I put it to music. Her voice cracked. Tears started flowing. She didn't wipe them away. I'm so tired. I'm so fucking tired of being Amy Winehouse, the tortured artist, the girl who sings soul because her soul is broken, the one who can only make art when she's destroying herself. I'm tired of people expecting me to bleed for their entertainment. David had worked with dozens of artists over his career. Legends, newcomers, everyone in between. He'd heard complaints, frustrations, creative blocks, but he'd never heard anyone articulate their relationship with music like this, with such raw honesty, such devastating clarity. "What do you want?" he asked softly. Amy wiped her face with her sleeve, took a shaking breath. "I want music to feel like it used to, when I was 14, 15 years old, singing jazz standards in my bedroom, learning Ella Fitzgerald songs by heart, before the contracts and the fame and the expectation and the pressure, when it was just me and the music. Pure, simple, mine." She picked up the crumpled lyrics from where she'd left them, smoothed them out on her knee, stared at the words. "I wrote these yesterday," she said. "Sat up all night writing. 4 in the morning, still going." "You know what they're about?" David shook his head. "They're about a girl who used to love singing, past tense, a girl who had this gift and didn't appreciate it until it was gone, until singing became obligation instead of joy, work instead of release." She looked at David. "That's where I am now. Past tense. The girl who used to love music but doesn't anymore, can't anymore." The room was silent except for the hum of equipment, the distant sound of traffic outside on Abbey Road, someone walking down the hallway. Normal life continuing while Amy's world fell apart. "I came here today thinking maybe it would be different," Amy said quietly. "Maybe if I just got in front of a microphone again, something would click, some switch would flip. The old feeling would come back, the magic, the connection, whatever made me love this in the first place." She crumpled the lyrics again, harder this time, crushed them in her fist, threw them across the room. They hit the wall and fell to the floor. A small, sad projectile. But it didn't. Because music isn't my friend anymore. It's my job, my burden, my cage, my reminder of everything I used to be and can't be again. Every note I sing is a ghost of who I was. David didn't know what to say, felt completely inadequate, useless. What could a sound engineer possibly offer in a moment like this? "You know what the worst part is?" Amy continued. Her voice was flat now, emotionless, like she'd cried out all the feeling. Everyone needs me to keep singing. My label needs another album. They've invested millions. My management needs me touring. My family needs the income. The fans need new material. Everyone's waiting for the big comeback. Amy Winehouse rising from the ashes like a phoenix. She laughed, that bitter sound again. But I don't want to rise from the ashes, Sully. I want to stop burning. I want to stop being consumed. I want to just stop. The words hung in the air, heavy, ominous, frightening. David felt tears in his eyes. He'd recorded Amy during her highest highs and lowest lows. The frank sessions when she was young and hungry, the back-to-black sessions when she was in love and heartbroken and channeling it all into music. The difficult sessions after Blake, the canceled sessions, the postponed sessions. But this was different. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't writer's block. This wasn't perfectionism or drugs or hangovers. This was surrender, complete and total. "What are you going to do?" he asked, afraid of the answer. Amy stood up slowly, grabbed her bag, shouldered it. "I don't know. Maybe take a long break. Maybe never record again. Maybe try to find a different relationship with music, one that doesn't require me to destroy myself to create. I just know I can't keep doing this, pretending I'm okay, pretending music still means what it used to, pretending I'm not completely hollow inside." She walked toward the door, each step deliberate, final, then stopped, turned back, looked at David. "Sully, promise me something." "Anything? Don't tell anyone about this conversation. Not my dad, not my management, not the label, nobody. Let them think I'm just having a bad day. Writer's block, artist temperament, whatever story makes them comfortable." David nodded. "I promise." Amy smiled. A sad, small, heartbreaking smile. "You've always been good to me, one of the few people in this industry who never treated me like a product, like a commodity, like Amy Winehouse TM, instead of just Amy. Thank you for that. It's meant more than you know." She opened the door, paused in the doorway, backlit by the fluorescent hallway lights. "And Sully, delete that recording, the one we just did, the failed take. It's not good enough. It'll never be good enough. Nothing I do will ever be good enough again." Then she was gone. The door closed softly behind her. David sat alone in Studio 2 for 30 minutes, not moving, not thinking, just sitting, processing. He'd seen artists struggle before, watched them fight writer's block, fight perfectionism, fight self-doubt, fight industry pressure. But he'd never seen an artist lose their fundamental love for music itself. Never watched someone's gift transform into a burden they couldn't carry. Amy was right about one thing. She used to light up in the studio, used to treat every session like a gift, would laugh between takes, make jokes, do silly voices, be present, be happy. That Amy was gone. Had been gone for a while, David realized. He'd just been too close to see it clearly. The Amy who left Studio 2 that day was exhausted, hollowed out, running on empty, operating on autopilot with no destination in mind. David didn't delete the recording like Amy asked. He couldn't. Something deep in his gut told him it might be important someday, that maybe someone would need to understand what she was going through. He saved it to a private hard drive, labeled it simply May 17, 2011, Amy Session, then locked it away in his home studio, told no one it existed. That was the last time David Sullivan saw Amy Winehouse alive. 2 months and 6 days later, she was dead. The night Amy died, July 23, 2011, David got the call from Pete, their mutual friend who'd introduced them years ago. David was at home, in his kitchen, making dinner with his wife. Normal Saturday evening. His phone rang. Pete's name on the screen. "Dave, I need to tell you something. You should sit down." David's wife looked at him, saw his face change, knew something was wrong. "Amy's dead. Found her at her flat in Camden this afternoon. They think alcohol poisoning." "I'm so sorry, mate." David dropped his fork. It clattered on the plate, loud in the sudden silence. He stared at his phone, couldn't process the words, couldn't make them make sense. Amy Winehouse, dead at 27. Alcohol poisoning, found in her Camden flat. The same number as Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, the 27 Club. the cursed age for musicians who burned too bright. His wife asked what was wrong, what happened, who called. David couldn't speak, couldn't form words, couldn't explain. All he could think about was that afternoon in May, 2 months ago. Amy sitting on the couch in Studio 2, crumpled lyrics on the floor, saying music wasn't her friend anymore, saying she wanted to stop burning. Had he missed something critical? Should he have called someone? Told her family? Gotten her help? Broken his promise? The guilt ate at him for months, kept him awake at night, made him question every decision. But there was also anger, deep burning anger at everyone who pushed Amy when she clearly needed rest, who booked tours when she needed healing, who demanded more music when she had nothing left to give, who saw her struggling and chose to look away because her suffering was profitable. The industry loved Amy Winehouse, but it didn't protect her. It used her up until there was nothing left, then acted shocked when she died. David went to Amy's funeral, stood in the back of the synagogue, watched hundreds of people mourn a woman they claimed to love. Industry executives who'd pressured her for albums, managers who'd booked tours she wasn't ready for, journalists who'd hounded her, photographers who'd stalked her, all crying, all devastated, all claiming they'd tried to help. But how many of them really knew her, really understood what she was going through, really listened when she tried to tell them she couldn't continue? David thought about the recording, the one from May 17th, Amy's voice cracking, fragile, breaking, the sound of someone at the end of their rope. That was the real Amy, not the powerful performer on stage at Glastonbury, not the Grammy-winning artist accepting awards, not the tabloid fixture stumbling out of pubs. The exhausted woman in Studio 2 who couldn't sing anymore because singing had become pain. That was real. That was true. For years, David kept the recording completely private, as promised, even at the funeral. Even when people asked if he knew anything, even when biographers reached out, he said nothing, honored his word to Amy. But as time passed, 5 years, then 8, then 10, he started thinking differently about his promise, about what Amy would actually want. Amy's legacy was being shaped by other people. Her music was being celebrated, her talent praised, her style imitated. But nobody talked honestly about the cost. Nobody discussed what fame and expectation and industry pressure did to her. Nobody examined the system that chewed her up and spit her out. Everyone wanted to remember Amy the star. Nobody wanted to acknowledge Amy, the person who died asking for the suffering to stop. In 2019, 8 years after her death, David made a decision. He reached out to Mitch Winehouse through a mutual contact, asked for a meeting, private, confidential, important. They met at a cafe in North London, neutral territory. David told Mitch everything about the May 17th session, about what Amy had said, about the recording he'd kept. Mitch listened, face getting paler, hands shaking slightly, tears rolling down his cheeks. "Can I hear it?" he asked. David had brought his laptop, headphones. They sat in that cafe, and Mitch listened to his daughter's voice, cracking, breaking, exhausted. When it finished, Mitch cried, really cried. The kind of grief that comes from finally understanding something you wish you'd known earlier. "I knew she was struggling," Mitch said, "but I didn't know it was this bad. I thought the music would save her, that getting back to work would help. I pushed her to record, to tour. I thought I was helping." David put his hand on Mitch's shoulder. "We all thought we were helping. That's the tragedy. Everyone meant well, but meaning well isn't the same as actually helping." Mitch asked David to keep the recording private longer. "The world isn't ready yet," he said. "They still want to believe Amy died while getting better, that she was excited about music again, that it was just a tragic accident. Not this. Not surrender." David understood, but he didn't entirely agree. Because the truth matters, even when it's painful, especially when it's painful. The truth is that Amy Winehouse was tired, exhausted, done, finished. The truth is that music, the thing that made her famous, the gift everyone celebrated, the talent that defined her, had become the thing she couldn't bear anymore. The truth is that she tried to tell people, in her own way, through conversations like the one with David, through canceled shows, through visible struggles, through actions that screamed, "I need help," in every way, except those exact words. But nobody wanted to listen. Nobody wanted to see Amy as anything other than a star who needed to keep shining, an artist who needed to keep creating, a product that needed to keep producing. Now, more than a decade after Amy's death, David thinks about that afternoon constantly. It haunts him, defines him, changes how he works with every artist. He thinks about Amy's words, "Music isn't my friend anymore." He thinks about how alone she must have felt, trapped by the very gift that made her famous, unable to quit because too many people depended on her, unable to continue because there was nothing left inside to give. He thinks about all the young artists coming up now, the ones being pushed and packaged and processed by the same industry that destroyed Amy. The ones who might be feeling exactly what Amy felt. The ones who need someone to tell them it's okay to stop. It's okay to rest. It's okay to put your well-being above your art. Because that's what Amy needed. Permission to stop. Protection from the machine. Someone to say, "Your life matters more than your music." And nobody gave it to her. Everyone wanted one more album, one more tour, one more performance, one more piece of Amy Winehouse until there was nothing left. The recording from May 17, 2011 still exists, locked away on David's hard drive. Amy's fragile voice, her cracking notes, her exhaustion captured in sound waves and digital files. Someday, maybe it will be released. Maybe people will finally understand what Amy was trying to say in her final months. That music can be magic, but it can also be a prison. That fame can be thrilling, but it can also be suffocating. That sometimes the most talented people are the ones suffering the most, because they give everything they have, every piece of themselves, every emotion, every experience, until there's nothing left but an empty shell performing for other people's entertainment. David Sullivan still works at Abbey Road, still records artists, still loves music, still believes in its power to heal and transform and inspire. But he's different now, permanently changed by that May afternoon, more careful, more aware, more protective. When he sees an artist struggling, truly struggling, not just having a bad day, he stops the session immediately, asks if they're okay, really okay, not okay enough to work, but genuinely okay as a human being. He's walked away from lucrative sessions because the artist clearly wasn't in a state to record. He's called managers and said, "Your artist needs help, not studio time." He's made enemies in the industry by prioritizing artist welfare over product delivery. He doesn't care. He learned the hard way that sometimes the most important thing an engineer can do isn't capture the perfect take. It's protect the person behind the voice, even if that means no music gets made that day, even if that means schedules slip and labels get angry and money gets lost. Because he knows what happens when you don't. When you prioritize the art over the artist, when you push people past their breaking point because the show must go on. You get Amy Winehouse, dead at 27, one of the greatest vocalists of her generation, a once-in-a-lifetime talent, an artist who could make you feel every word she sang, gone, forever, because nobody said stop when she desperately needed to hear it. Amy was human, fragile, hurting, tired beyond measure. And on May 17, 2011, she tried to tell someone. She tried to explain that she couldn't carry the weight anymore, that the gift had become a curse, that music, her oldest friend, her greatest gift, her defining characteristic, had transformed into something she couldn't bear to touch. David heard her, but he didn't know what to do with what he heard, didn't know how to help, didn't know who to tell without breaking her trust. And 2 months later, Amy was gone. The recording exists as testimony, as evidence, as a reminder of what we do to artists who give us everything. We love them, we celebrate them, we buy their albums and attend their concerts and post about them on social media. And then we ask for more, always more. One more song, one more album, one more tour, one more performance, until there's nothing left to give, until they break, until we lose them. Amy Winehouse broke slowly, publicly, painfully, and the world watched and applauded and demanded more until there was nothing left. The studio where they recorded that day is still there, still booking sessions, still creating music, still making magic. Sometimes late at night when David is alone in the building, working late on a mix or preparing for the next day's session, he swears he can hear Amy's voice echoing through the hallways. Not the powerful Grammy-winning voice that made her famous. The other one, the tired one, the honest one, the one that said, "I can't do this anymore." And he wishes more than anything in the world that someone had listened when it mattered, that someone had said, "Then don't, just stop, just rest, just be Amy." Not Amy Winehouse, the star, not the product, not the brand, just Amy, the person, the human being who matters more than any song ever could. But nobody said that, because the music industry doesn't work that way. It never has. Artists are investments, products, content creators, revenue streams, not people who need rest, not humans who can break, not souls that can be extinguished by too much pressure and too little support. The recording from May 17, 2011 is Amy's real final studio session, the truth of who she was in her last months. Not the Tony Bennett duet that everyone celebrates, beautiful and professional and polished as it was. But the May session was raw truth, unfiltered honesty, Amy at her most vulnerable, her most real, her most human. And maybe that's the legacy that matters most, not the Grammy Awards, not the platinum albums, not the viral performances, not the cultural impact or the fashion influence or the musical innovation, but the moment when Amy Winehouse, exhausted and alone and desperate, told someone the truth about what fame and pressure and expectation had done to her. Music isn't my friend anymore. Because admitting that, acknowledging that the gift had become a burden, takes more courage than any performance ever could, more honesty than any lyric, more vulnerability than any stage could hold. David Sullivan carries that truth with him. Every single day, every session, every artist, every recording. He carries Amy's words, her pain, her honesty, her final message, and he hopes that somewhere, somehow, someday, sharing this story might help someone else, some other tired artist, some other exhausted performer, some other person who feels trapped by the thing they're supposed to love. It's okay to stop. It's okay to rest. It's okay to say you can't do it anymore. You are more important than your art. Your well-being matters more than anyone's entertainment. Your life has value beyond what you can produce. Amy never got to hear those words when she needed them most, but maybe someone else will. Maybe this story will reach someone standing where Amy stood that May afternoon. And maybe that will be enough. Maybe one person will choose rest instead of destruction, will choose life instead of art, will choose to stop burning before they're completely consumed. That would be Amy's real legacy. Not the music, not the fame, not the tragedy, but the lesson she taught us through her suffering, the truth she tried to tell us before she died, that artists are human beings first, and sometimes the most important thing we can do is let them stop. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, exhaustion, mental health challenges, or feeling trapped by expectations, please reach out for help. You don't have to carry it alone. Your life matters more than any performance. The Amy Winehouse Foundation, www.amywinehousefoundation.org. UK Mental Health Support, Samaritans, 116 123 24/7. Music Industry, Mental Health, Help Musicians, UK 0800 030 6789. Crisis, text line, text HELLO to 5088.